welcome. Alicia Yusuf here with your astrology insights for the fortnight starting on the 25th of December and going all the way through until the 7th of January. So this straddles quite an important period of time. Of course, the Christmas season, the holiday season for those that celebrate, and also the new year, the Gregorian calendar new year anyway. So it's a sense of endings, new beginnings, and there's a lot of excitement in the air, especially as we reach right towards the end of December. So let's dive in. We do start this week in Christmas Day for those that celebrate on the 25th of December with Jupiter at that anaretic degree of Aquarius, right at that last degree, and the moon in Virgo, which is generally very practical. It's about getting things done, being very logical, ticking off the lists, being useful. So we might not be in the normal let it go celebratory mood. It's perfect for, diving in and getting all the cooking done or wrapping all the presents up. So doing what you can to relax into this as much as possible. There's some pretty tricky energy around on Christmas Day. And look, Christmas Day has had some very tricky energy for the last 3 years, actually. So, between the eclipses that were going on before and Pluto transits, another one. So we've got Venus coming back, now retrograde, to conjunct Pluto. So it's not new. This is energy that has been sitting in the background for the last week or so. We've already met the conjunction between these two planets back in mid-December. But this is the second of 3 hits for this, and the next one won't happen until about the 3rd or the 4th of March. So it's really about getting very real, speaking truth in our relationships, and it'd be interesting on Christmas Day. I know for many, here in an Australian tradition, it often involves getting together with people that you don't normally choose to get together with, dysfunctional family relationships going on, and often alcohol involved as well. So do be careful about power and control issues coming up this day. If you do see it flaring, step back. It's staying inwards is the point right now as Jupiter's going backwards. I do really think that Venus, as Venus goes backwards, Pluto has opened Venus's eyes to what is happening. There's a sense of, I talked about the Persephone myth in the last video. When Hades took Persephone into the underworld, he opened her eyes to what happens under the surface or underneath, and opened her eyes to the power dynamics, how her mother controlled her and dominated her and stopped her from, the marriages that she may have wanted to have to make. So it's helping us know what's really going on. And it's asking us potentially, as we face what's going on around us on Christmas, on that 25th of December, what are your values when you think at a higher level, at a spiritual or soul purpose level? What are you aiming your life towards? And are the people, the situations, whatever you value, aligned with that? And if they're not, how much importance do you want to place on those relationships? Is it worthwhile wading in and getting caught up in emotional drama on this day? Or is it easier to stand back neutrally and just watch it play out? I wonder as well if we're going to start really acknowledging the waste that happens around Christmas, the presents that are bought and discarded, the paper, the environmental impact we have, and just what consumerism does, the trap it keeps so many of us in. So perhaps it's a more thoughtful, mindful Christmas for many of us. And I also think it may be where we just get new revelations on old relationships or old relationship patterns coming to the surface. So it's exact at 10:01 p.m. in Australia, in Brisbane here. So just to be aware, this will happen on the 25th of December everywhere. So just to be aware of that, it comes with definitely a note of warning. Now, a few days later, we have Mercury in a sextile to Neptune, 27th of December. That's early in the morning here in Australia, so it'll be the 26th of December everywhere. Now, if you buy in Mercury rules commerce, and if you're one that buys into Boxing Day sales, this may be where you go a little bit overboard, or you lose your boundaries around money, or you get a little bit confused about just how many purchases you've made, and there may be a shock in the credit card statement coming up. It's definitely a holiday frame of mind, that mental checkout that can come. And the moon does move into Libra that same day, so it's not a day for being thoughtful and logical, but it's definitely a day for dreaming, being intuitive, and just having a creative turn of mind. So think music, think poetry, think anything that it brings mindful flow. Meditation, of course, is fantastic under this energy too. Now, what we've all been waiting for, a few days later, on the 29th of December. So it's pretty much 29th of December everywhere. I think Pacific time, it may still be the 28th, but we have Jupiter returning back to Pisces. And it's like coming out of the desert to the oasis and knowing you get to stay there. We did have Jupiter in Pisces mid-May through to the end of July this year, 2021, but it goes back into Pisces and it's there for a much longer stay. We get 4.5 months now, and we get to fully sink ourselves into that pool of rest and restoration. Jupiter coming back into its own sign, and a water sign at that. It just has much more compassion, sensitivity, and it's away from Saturn. Yay! Just that general energy of release here and letting go. So I think here, we're definitely able to access the power to cleanse ourselves, to heal, and to bring ourselves back to life. And I just get such a strong sense with this that we really have opportunities to do a lot of healing. It feels like, I think I keep using this analogy with clients of a ship in a storm. You just have to brace yourself while you're in the storm. But once the storm's over, it's finding that safe harbor where you can stitch up the sails and rebuild the mast and rewire the jigging and everything. I'm not sure if I'm using the right sailing technology there, but terminology there, but you get what I mean. So it is this sense of, okay, what is it that in this oasis, this safe harbor, that needs to be cleansed or needs to be healed? So I think one of the things is definitely getting into our emotions. This is a water sign. It's where we've been held so tight for so long, really the last 2 years, and we're all exhausted on so many levels. It's where there's a little bit of release able to happen, and where with that release, things come to the surface. And this is one of the things about tears. They're actually very healing. When we cry, especially what they call psychic crying, which is emotional crying, there is a release of oxytocin. There is a release of endorphins, these lovely, healing, comforting energies, the neurotransmitters and brain chemicals that soothe us and relieve us. Crying can also help reduce stress, and tears contain painkillers, which is really interesting as well. So I think this points a lot to where we can allow ourselves tears, where we can allow the moisture to flow. There is healing there. It might not feel so great, when you're sobbing those great deep sobs, it's painful. But there's that lightness and relief afterwards that I feel like Jupiter and Pisces can bring. I also feel like we're turning back to our own faith, lifting our eyes up to the universe, and our hearts craving connected oneness with others. So I do wonder what will happen in this period of time, especially April, when Jupiter will conjunct Neptune, of how we strive more to be more connected at a humanity level. Jupiter rituals are back on the table, and so use that next day. The 29th is a Wednesday, so do use the Thursday, the 30th, to make the most of your Jupiter ritual. So prepare yourself, get all the ingredients. If you want to know a good Jupiter ritual, I'll add a link in the show notes. I always recommend Sphere and Sundry and their products. and their Jupiter ritual there is a great one to lean into. And I think it's really nice that we have the moon in Scorpio. It adds to the intuitive feeling and the healing. Yes, the moon in Scorpio is always deep and intense, but it's that sense that, okay, it can help us excavate and clear things out really quickly. If you want to know more about Jupiter and Pisces and its transits, you can sign up to my newsletter and you'll immediately receive a link to be able to download an in-depth guide that I'm giving to my newsletter subscribers for free. So yeah, feel free to hop over to my website, aliciayusuf.com, to get a copy of that. Now, I've just realized I forgot to do my little wheel out of the transits going. So let me continue this. Catch us up. So here we have on the 30th, now we have here Jupiter fully here in Pisces. And we also on this day have a really interesting lineup. It's actually over the next couple of days. So what we've got here is the conjunction between retrograde Venus and Mercury traveling together. So that's happening at 8:27 p.m. on the 30th. And then very quickly after, as you can see here, the next day, Mercury will conjunct Pluto as well. And interestingly enough, this is the exact point at the 24-degree mark that Mercury will it will station retrograde at the beginning of February. So that's going to be happening on the 4th of February. So there's a lot going on around this point, and I think so Mercury enters its shadow here, ready for its next retrograde period. So it does start that retrograde on the 14th of January, and I think just be prepared for the messages that come through in this. It speaks to me of speaking soft truths of great power. So it's that sense that often, something I learned in teaching, especially in early childhood, if you want a room full of children to be quiet, you speak softly and you speak sweetly, and they'll match their energy to you. And this is what this feels like, that the messages are gentle and they're intuitive with Venus retrograde. It's these inner truths that are able to come out, but not in a shouted way or not in a loud way, but in a very softly spoken way. So it's important to be able to listen out in these few days to what's trying to be said. And there will, of course, be more emphasis on this as Mercury comes to this point on the 4th of February. So it'll be that whole period, I'd say 2nd through to the 6th of February. And then, of course, when Venus comes back through here in early March, along with Mars too. So maybe messages from past relationships bringing you the facts about what the power dynamics are really about. You may find your thinking's a bit obsessive over these few days. And if you're obsessing about a thing or a person or a situation, ask yourself why. Why is this so important to you? What do you focus on? What are you fixated on? Is it actually trying to get you away from something else, so you're not thinking about something else? Or is there hurt or pain you need to excavate here and really look at? Journaling on this day will be such a cathartic release over these few days, actually. So give the energy to that. It's on the, so Mercury is going to be exact with Pluto on the 30th of December at 7:53 p.m. here in Brisbane, and Mercury will conjunct Venus the earlier day. So that will be on the 29th of December there. And from here, we then have that same day on the 30th, but later that day, we have Mars in Sagittarius here, forming a sextile to Saturn in Aquarius. And these sextiles are they're an interesting energy. I always find that yes, they're usually helpful, but you've got to put some work in to make the most of the opportunities. So a little bit of work goes a long way today, especially in matters around strength and discipline. And I think it's got a lot to do with faith and truth and freedom with these two signs. Both Sagittarius and Aquarius are so much about ethics and standards and justice and truth and freedom, absolutely about freedom. So it might be that you have to focus on the long term, and you may find some tests to your commitment or your discipline towards something. So it may feel like you've got obstacles in your way, but they're actually a test of your faith. So just remember, if it's something that's really important to you and you want to stay committed to it, then do so. Put energy into that commitment, put energy into that discipline to keep going in the direction that you need to. From here, we then go into New Year's Eve, and we do have the moon in Sagittarius, which helps end the day on a hopeful note. Although I will say, if we just have a look here, that the moon, as we get towards that evening, the moon is coming to conjunct Mars. So we may be a little bit emotionally exuberant or passionate in what we're doing. So just be careful around the choices that you're making on New Year's Eve, especially here in Australia. So don't overestimate yourself, and it just has a sense of, we can get a little bit too enthusiastic with our assertion of our opinions or what we believe to be our truth. Remember that your truth isn't necessarily going to be somebody else's under this energy. But I do like that both these planets are looking to Jupiter in Pisces now, so hopefully that will cool and calm things down. And I will say before that, the moon actually does conjunct the south node here as well. And there is this sense that day of potentially reflecting on what we've left behind, what we've lost in the previous year, and what this general cycle, because this will actually be the last time that the moon touches by conjunction this the south node in Sagittarius. And this, especially here, there's just this sense of, there's been so much left behind. It's almost like soldiers returning from war, thinking of their buddies, their companions that have been left behind in battle. So it may be just reviewing that as you get ready to embrace the year ahead. But we do start the new year with that moon in Sag here in Australia, mostly past Mars. And it is a general sense, I think, as well, of, I really like this, is that same day what's happening is we've got the sun here in Capricorn in a lovely, helpful trine, supportive trine to Uranus in Taurus. And it's just this idea of meeting the year with excitement and a sense of new possibilities happening. You may see new perspectives, and your goal setting may totally be one big experiment. It's something that you're doing very differently to the previous rituals around the new year, around the day that it starts. So it's a day to embrace new habits, seek new experiences, and just open yourself up to change. I don't think it's quite throwing caution to the wind. The sun Capricorn's definitely not about that. It does like its caution, its hesitancy, but the winds of change are blowing through. So cast off any old ways that are holding you back, and perhaps try to leave fear in the rear vision mirror as much as you can in the times ahead. Now, the next day marks more of a somber tone. This is the 2nd of January. The moon moves into Capricorn, and it just gets a sense that we're getting ready to face reality after the holiday season. Many people will be going back to work on the 3rd of January. So it's preparing ourselves for that back to reality feeling after the weird vibe that holidays can be, of like, what day is it? Where am I? Especially if you've been imbibing a lot of the holiday spirit in this period of time too. The other thing that happens this day, and it is happening in the evening, 5:09 p.m., is that Mercury moves into Aquarius. And I do like this. And yes, it is where Mercury, Mercury's traveling over where it will retrograde through. So we'll get quite a bit around this back and forth over Aquarius and Capricorn. But I feel like it continues on that Sun trine Uranus energy of how we can have innovative plans or think experimentally about what's possible, new and different insights into ourselves. Mercury is definitely happier in an air sign, that's for sure. It's still under Saturn, but Mercury likes Saturn because of that logical, rational, reasoned presence that Saturn brings. So I think as well, once Mercury does enter Aquarius, it gets very close before it retrogrades to Saturn, but it is what we call co-present with Saturn. So there'll be a lot around clarity, facing reality, looking at our responsibilities and our duties, looking at where we're constricted and constrained, and thinking about how we can gain higher perspectives or neutrality of the mind. Mercury in Aquarius always makes me think of Dr. Spock. The logic is the only path forward. It's the higher path forwards. And so that's maybe what we're visiting under this period of time. So I love this kind of start to the new year. And then, we have the very practical new moon the next day. So that is going to be on the 3rd of January that we have, the 3rd of January, that we will have this new moon at 12 degrees of Capricorn. So it's 4:33 a.m. here in Brisbane, so 5:33 a.m. in Sydney and the rest of the east coast of Australia. And this will be the 2nd of January, of course, for many of those, the rest of those around the world. This is the first new moon we've had in Capricorn that hasn't been an eclipse and hasn't been entangled with Pluto since the beginning of 2018. So that's 4 years. And I really like the new moon in Capricorn at the beginning of the year, because it's this sense of, right, what can I accomplish in the year ahead? What can I achieve mastery within? And what responsibilities will I choose to shoulder? And I think with the trine to Aquarius, the trine to Uranus still going on under this energy, it will definitely have this feeling of, you know what, there's some responsibilities I'm willing to take on, and there's others that I'm cutting myself loose from. I need freedom with this. So I think it buys a lot into this sense of meeting 2022 from a much more free, a much more open space. And I do think that it will be extremely productive and logical, and brings us quite clear-sighted energy, focused on the long term, but focused on how we can find freedom in the long term. And then from here, really, the next thing that the moon touches is first a sextile to Neptune in Pisces, and then a conjunction with Venus retrograding back. So it just has this energy of good things ahead, especially around creativity and connecting into our value systems and what's the kind of relationships that we really want to honor in our world. That same day as well, and it'll be later that night, so it's at 9:39 p.m. So this will be the 3rd of January everywhere in the world. We will have Jupiter in Pisces coming in to square the nodes. Sorry, before I go there, if you'd like to know more about this new moon in Capricorn, then please do sign up to my New Moon Magic workshop that will be happening on that 3rd of January or 2nd of January, depending on where you are in the world. You can access that via my website. But yeah, I'll be really digging into the opportunities and the kind of intentions that you can set under this energy and get a really clear go at this area of your chart that you haven't had a good go at with a new moon for 4 years. So it's a really powerful one, especially if you have a Pisces rising. You know, you're starting out the year with Jupiter conjunct this, and then this new moon happening in your 11th house of hopes and dreams and wishes, what we call the granddaddy power period. So it's an especially potent one for you. But anyway, coming back to this, Jupiter will square the bend. It will be at the bends as it squares the nodes, and this is at the southern bending. And it's an interesting energy. It's a lot about what we're letting go of and how I feel like it's going to be tests of faith on this day. There's a sense that what we're prepared to take leaps of faith around and what we're prepared to believe in will take us up or down the spiritual evolutionary pole of our lives, as Judith Hill calls it. So remember that the word belief is to be life. And whether this is allowing yourself to live or whether this is allowing others to do the same, it's perhaps around discovering what living truly means and whether you have to jettison the flotsam and jetsam from your life. It's really not that important. So you can stay on with true to your soul's purpose or true to your spirit's calling to move forward in this place. So from here, 6th of January, there's not much going on between now and then. So on the 6th of January, we do have a lovely sextile between Venus in Capricorn. So this is the 2nd. We had this earlier back in December as well. And this is happening at 2:03 a.m. So this is probably 5th of January for much of the world. I think it'll really enhance dreams, especially about past relationships. I wouldn't be surprised if you dream about a past partner or a past relationship or something that reminds you of that kind of energy. But think about romantic escapes, creative urges, and seeking higher pleasures. I also think that any time spent in inner dwelling with the Venus retrograde energy will bring insights, but they're insights that are felt rather than insights of the mind. So giving yourself the space to step back and perhaps be in retreat on this day will be extremely supportive of whatever you're trying to achieve under the Venus retrograde. And the moon, as we can see too on this day, first time the moon touches Jupiter in Pisces. So this is just such a really lovely energy for getting into those pleasurable Piscean spaces. So, you know, walks on the beach, time by the water, time doing anything with flow. Might be a big emotional day as well. There might be some kind of cathartic release, and let it give it the space if you can. Remember what I was talking about earlier with tears. So technically that's actually happening 12:04 a.m. on the 7th of January here, but it's pretty much the 6th of January for the whole world. So do enjoy that energy. And that's really how we will end the week. So wishing you a wonderful holiday season, however you celebrate or not, and even more, a really special and magical start to 2022. And here's to wishing for all of us that we have a much better year ahead. See you in a couple of weeks.